Hello and welcome to the Week 6 Google Coding Hangout. Today we have three students presenting various topics, and this week we're going to start off with Dario presenting a feature of GNOME Soy that he's been working on.
Alright, so during Google Coding last year, we got something that we call the client API. It was made for better cross-platform support and for taking out platform-specific code out of Ellipsoid. And to make use of the client API, a couple of new clients were created to help for better integration with the respective desktop environments they were developed for. One of them was GNOME Soy, intended to be used on GNOME environments, and I'm not really sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, but still. For this, what you see now, this is what GNOME Soy did initially when it was created. Just a black screen, black OpenGL window that couldn't really draw because it actually didn't work as a client properly at that time. So during Google Coding last year, I implemented some basic stuff like I added some menus so you could open an About window and stuff like that. And also one of the core functionalities it needed to be able to run Python files in a separate thread. And now, yeah, one could open a Python file that uses PySoy from GNOME Soy. However, since it didn't implement a proper client class at that time, PySoy wouldn't accept it as a client, so it used the default one. Alright, I will screen share the full screen right now. It didn't accept it as a client, but okay, entire screen. There you go. Okay, so this is the GNOME Soy window, and this here, this is the menu you get, and you can open and stuff like that. Okay, About and so on. So we got that, but as I said, it rendered in a separate window. So now during the holiday break, Mike actually implemented a GTK plugin socket implementation, and thus it was possible for GNOME Soy to render in its own window. So when I can open a file like that. Okay, let me find the PySoy. I go to the PySoy folder in the examples, and I'm going to run 2 cubes. So there we go. It renders everything inside the GNOME Soy window, and we basically have the core functionality done. So now we can go on with implementing other actual integration stuff, like using GNOME online accounts and stuff like connectivity accounts, password management, stuff like that. In general, better integration. And of course, obviously, there are some bugs, especially with the Python, the executing of Python files. It has to add stuff to the path. Pathing is broken a bit, stuff like that. But anyway, basically that's the core of GNOME Soy actually working. And talking about bugs, I think Mike has something related to the rendering to present on GNOME Soy, so we can go on with him now. But let me see. Let's stop this. I've got the feeling my screen sharing is broken again. Okay.
Michael, are you ready to continue
Okay.
up with that, and then we can ask you all questions?
So, any questions to Daryl, or can I start?
Since you two sort of go hand in hand with your presentations, we'll do
Okay,
questions afterwards.
yes. You see my, I hope you see this. Okay. So the bug was in drawing. It it occurs when you try to draw a Pisoi widget like a window. And what was broken? Or first I gonna show you the uh, mm, how it looks before. So this is I'm gonna compute this and show you what was broken. You see this window, genome soy, and when I tried to open any Python script like this, I got car dumped. So that was crashing, and I have to fix this. And uh, what I first noticed it was that AGL choose config need as a config variable. You see this? It needs a pointer because it will be changed later, and this will choose the right configuration. So uh, that was that line. It was that line, and you see this. This is just this create a new a new array. So this is constant. I mean this cannot be saved to uh, this cannot be saved to use it later. Okay, so, and next uh, and AGL config wasn't even set before. That was the most important thing that was bad. And also what I noticed was that LGL set error, get error, give me LGL bad config error. And how I fixed it? How I fixed it? I just create a new variable and uh, pass that variable to choose config. And later in other and next I just set the AGL config variable with configs, the first config. And I'm gonna show you some what Vala C generated is that the AGL config, and it is just a new array that is later is freed, so we can't use it later. And it's all. And what also I changed? The first plugin that was used before used just a blank, just a new window of just a new GTK window. So that was a bit wrong. So I decided to use Xembed protocol to embed soy client window. It's just like a socket in the main application, and we use GTK plug to connect to that socket in the main application. I'm gonna show you how it works now. It just work and open file as Daryl showed you. and just work. And any ideas for next task, for further task? I think it could be nice to have a user interface in GTK Builder. Like we can just create it with GLET, like just putting some widgets, etc., etc. And oh yes, it is. Just we just put some widgets in the window, and just it's really easier and more clear. And next idea is internationalization support. So we can use the app in many languages, like in English by default, and in Spanish, etc., etc. And some minor features like GTK fighter and file chooser, because by default we see all files in file chooser, but we can hide other files that aren't Python scripts. And what I'm working right now is XMPP integration and Google two-factor authentication. So I think it's all. So if you have any questions, please ask. And my headers are dead.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about either Michael or Daryl's presentation?
Okay.
So.
Good job.
Okay, so shaders. Let's see. So in new versions of OpenGL, we use shaders to determine, for example, the positions of vertices and what color they become. So we first start with the vertex shader. So vertex data is passed to the vertex shader, for example, here. And the vertex shader sets the position of the vertices, right here. Data is then passed from this vertex shader to the fragment shader, for example, here. And the fragment shader sets the color of each fragment, or pixel. So here we have attributes, uniforms, and varyings. Attributes are data per vertex. So in this example, we have a vertex position and the normal vector of each vertex. Uniforms are variables that can be set in the code, and they remain constant for each program. And varyings is data that's passed from the vertex shader to the fragment shader. So here we have a basic vertex shader. We multiply this vertex with the proper matrices, projection and model view, and we just pass the vertex and normal vectors to the fragment shader. Here we have a bunch of uniforms determining lighting. And here are all the calculations for determining the final color of a pixel. So in PySoy, we first start at the scene. Where if we call render on a scene, it sets up all these matrices. We have the projection matrix, we have the view matrix from the camera. And then for every body, we call render on it. Which then, for example, calculates its own model matrix. And calls enable on a material, which is basically a wrapper around the shader, which is, let's see. Whoops. So it compiles all these shaders and links them into a program, and then just passes all this data into the shader. So I think that's it. Anything else? Any questions?
So you were the primary student that wrote the shaders last year.
Yeah.
So when you wrote the shaders, they're primarily just drop-in replacements for our old OpenGL1 code that used fixed pipelines. Have you seen ways that we may be able to simplify the non-shader code by using the shaders or changing the shaders to work better with the engine? So our rendering code is a little on the complex side, especially in some of the areas with multi-pass textures and such.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it can be simplified without losing a lot of the functionality we have. For example, let's see. Alright, there was the textured fragment shader, which is pretty complex. It relies on uninitialized textures having being black, because otherwise we need to have branching, which is bad for performance. So.
Well, what I meant is, can we move, not simplify is maybe not be the right term, would it be possible in other areas to move some of the code that's currently being executed in C into shaders? Because we have, I don't know how much we've already moved already, I don't think very much, but it was, some of the areas were a little crazy. Working around limitations of fixed pipeline. When the original students wrote that code, most of it were students between dual signal code and DCI. They kept coming back as, well, this would be way easier if we use OpenGL 2. So.
There might be calculations which can be done in shaders. I can't think of an example right now, but it's possible.
Anyone else?
Sam, or in the dark, I guess. Currently, are the shaders being loaded? Right now, are the shaders being loaded sort of in a dynamic way, or is it very hard coded where you need these certain attributes for each shader? I've done a little bit with shaders, but at least coming from a Java background, I would have created like tons and tons of objects, each with different shaders, and it would have made sense in my head, but not really anybody else's.
It's kind of both, actually. Shaders are in separate files, but they're loaded and they're linked in by the. There is a shader tool that links them as external strings. Let me see if I can find it.
WAF tool. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, this.
So they're literally just being compiled in LinkedIn as string constants into libsoy right now. We had thrown out as an idea allowing the game programmers to write their own shaders. The problem with that being security. If you allow people to write their own shaders and they can access part of the graphics memory that they shouldn't, perhaps some drivers even crash the whole system. And since the games are considered untrusted, that probably wouldn't work very well. It'd be too difficult to add security on top of, at least for now. That's one of the things WebGL does, is they add a whole security layer on top of the shaders. Make sure that you can't access things outside of the memory space you're supposed to be. So, security perspective, completely unrelated to shaders, going back in time, the project that we originated from used a Python-based game networking engine, which had to be removed from all Linux distributions after a security advisory was posted that it was literally sending Python pickles over the network. If you read the documentation, it has a great big warning on why you don't do that. Allows arbitrary code to be executed. And it was peer-to-peer in an open network. So if you're running one of the games written on that engine, which are only 2 games written in that engine, you could send takeover commands from an arbitrary peer and take over their system. So the distros didn't like that, and it basically poisoned the entire project permanently. That big of a security violation. That did let it back in, but it required a security audit at the level that the team was not ready to provide. So, it'd be great if we were working inside of the sandbox and we didn't have to worry about that.
So, does anybody have any other questions about either of the presentations? Any comments? Cool things that you did this week? Tasks that you thought were impossible?
I think there's been a lot of goals done this year. I mean, right now, running low on tasks open right now, you guys are tackling stuff that last year a lot of students considered impossible. So, and you guys are actually doing them. So,
I can give an update on the Vela bug.
What?
Alright, so let's see. Let me find it first.
So Sam, while you're looking for the Vela bug, can you just give a brief description of the bug?
Okay, so it's triggered by a certain case which I'm Trying to find. Hmm. Actually, let me. Hmm.
Well, let's be. I believe if we're talking about the same thing, the Vala bug is actually. It's been just an annoyance. It hasn't actually stopped anything from working. It's just caused like barf of warnings when you compile. All of which are completely bogus and have no impact on the compiled code whatsoever. But it is a quality assurance issue, and you turn debug on, you should be able to see the errors that are real, not just a bunch of errors that are caused by Vala.
All right, here is the case that triggers it. So we have a class that subclass is an abstract class which implements an interface. So methods, yeah, methods work fine. Oh, actually, this is the semi-fixed one. So methods work fine and don't generate warnings. Properties do. And there was a small bug in Vala which let's. Vala. It's going to take a while to find, but there was a case where hmm.
So the general gist of the bug is that it is complaining about things that it shouldn't be complaining about?
Yeah, there was a case where it didn't do something for abstract classes, which it did for methods. So fixing that kind of fixed the bug, except now it generates an error, which is related to abstract classes, I think.
And the error prevents it from compiling properly?
Yeah, but it generates proper code now, so it's kind of odd.
Proper code or proper code with warnings?
Proper code, except there's a line that shouldn't be there. All you probably need is to add a case for that in where Vala generates a C code. But I'm trying to find it, so.
Okay. Is this working on a task, or do you need a task written for this?
It's still the same task, the Vala warnings.
Okay. Yeah, it never created broken code per se. It's just the code that it generated caused warnings with GCC. things were not the right type. It's just a really typecasting need to be added. But the Vola C was getting confused by the way the G VAPI was written. Is that correct?
The GVAPI had that abstract interface case.
And we've made a few improvements to Vola during GCI this year. So
Is this sort of a problem that you get when you're going when you have not strongly typed language going into a strongly typed language?
no, it was just the VAPI. The VAPIs were being read correctly but generating the wrong code, if I understand correctly. It was confusing even for the Vola guys who looked at it. They'd spend a couple hours looking at it, couldn't figure out why it was happening. They recognized the bug, and then they immediately said, well, you can always make the bug go away by silencing warnings. So they don't consider it a high priority, but given that it's burying legitimate warnings when you do that, yeah. I don't think there's ever a case that anyone could think of that it would generate code that didn't compile, which is what got out of the top. They definitely have higher priorities than this. So, and it is still a very, in the grand scheme of things, this is still a very new language. So, at least we picked one that it's got the GNOME community behind it, rather than one that's developed by one person, which we've had before.
Okay, so here's the relevant code from method, and here's the relevant code from property. It's missing the is abstract. So that fixes it, but then there's an additional line of code that shouldn't be there. So, yeah.
So when you compile Valcode, does it go into the Lexer and then get parsed into or changed into C, and then compiled as C? Yes.
Yeah, if you look in the build directory in Lipsoi, you actually see what gets generated, which is the first step of debugging what was happening with this. Any point you want to, especially when you're writing your own VAPIs, if you want to see why something is breaking, you can look first in the generated.c files. We very intentionally do this two steps. First, because, well, we want to be able to see the debug.c, but also because we're linking in non-Vola source components such as the GLSL files.
So that was creating all these warnings. It gets casted to Class A when it should be Class B.
Mm-hmm.
And putting that fix in fixes that, but there's an additional line that makes a reference to a method that doesn't exist. So, yeah. That one, I believe.
Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, good job. I was expecting people to do something really patchy on our side to fix this, but you've gone a lot deeper in fixing Vola, which is obviously the better way of going about. This is going to benefit other projects other than us. So, I mean, this bug affects every single Vola and Genie-based project that uses libg, which is almost all of them. And a lot of them are becoming, a lot of the GNOME projects are starting to get rewritten into Vola because it simplifies the code a lot, makes it easier to debug. So, this is pretty awesome. stream. I had a question, Daryl and Michael. You guys get your Christmas presents?
Yep, got them. Everything is fine and working. Thanks a lot.
Yes, me too.
Cool. So everything got through customs, at least on the Eastern European side.
Yeah, it was all fine.
Cool. Do you guys get I know we're still at Hangouts on Air, but do you guys get any weird stuff from customs, or did it just fly through? Just arrive in,
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
did it just arrive on your doorstep, or did you have to pay money to customs or something too?
No.
Yeah, they arrived at the postal office, so it was alright.
Good to know. I'm trying to get a designer to put a T-shirt together for us for all our students this year, or at least students at a certain threshold of completed tasks. So that's a useful test case for seeing how we can get T-shirts out. We're warned by Google that could be an issue. They sometimes have stuff not arrive or get bounced back because of customs issues. So at least for you guys, it should be fine then.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not Google, so we may be able to get stuff through customs that Google wouldn't. Because like, Google, you got money to pay us extra to get this through customs. You should bribe someone.
Yeah.
Maybe that's only South America. I remember that we had that issue with some South American countries tried to extort over customs fees. Like, this $100 computer is actually $10,000, and
Oh wow.
I'm exaggerating just a little bit. Do you have anything else for the hangout this week?
Does anybody have anything else that they want to add? So I guess this is the second to last hangout of GCI this year.
Yeah.
1 week left.
So on that note, if no one else has anything else to say, I guess we should end the hangout right here. So, any last words? See you guys next week.
See ya. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.